Hey guys, tonight we step into the golden morning of a remote Bactrian oasis, where the desert stretches endlessly and the promise of adventure hangs in the dry, warm air. Before we dive too deep, take a soft, slow breath, and if you genuinely enjoy this gentle journey, please like the video and subscribe. I'd also love to hear from you. Drop a comment with the country you're watching from and the local time there, so we can imagine our little global nighttime caravan together. The oasis itself shimmers with life. You feel the first sun warming your shoulders as camels shift their weight and merchants begin their slow, methodical preparations. Palms sway lazily, water glints from the spring, and the scent of dates and dried herbs hangs in the air. There's a soft murmur as traders call out, check packs, and unwrap bundles of silk, gold dust, and fragile ceramics. You might think, this looks serene, but honestly, you probably won't survive this style if it were the desert outside the oasis walls. The reality is both breathtaking and harsh. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. With that done, let your gaze drift over the small crowd around you. You notice a young boy carefully brushing sand from a camel's legs, a woman tying up bales of aromatic spices, and an old man tracing patterns in the dirt, perhaps planning the route for the day. Historians still argue whether Bactrian oasis settlements were primarily defensive hubs or simply convenient watering stops, but either way, life here revolves around rhythm and preparation. You tiptoe toward the water's edge. The cool surface contrasts sharply with the warming sand underfoot, and tiny fish dart through shallow pools, oblivious to the desert's endless sun. You hear the low, gentle hum of camels, their bells tinkling like distant wind chimes. It's easy to imagine that for a merchant centuries ago, this first morning sight would be both a relief and a cue that the real adventure, long roads, endless sand, and unpredictable encounters, was about to begin. You wander among tents, noticing a curious detail. Some traders coat their camels with mud early in the morning, claiming it keeps flies away, while others whisper about charms tied around the animals' necks to ward off desert spirits. Scholars are still uncertain whether these rituals were purely superstitious or if there was some practical origin now lost to time. You chuckle softly at the thought modern travelers might just call it camouflage and morale boosting. A breeze carries the faint, almost intoxicating scent of roasted grains from a nearby fire pit. You hear merchants exchanging quiet jokes, one mimicking a camel sneeze, and the soft slap of canvas tents against wooden poles. Light glints off polished ceramic water jars, and you notice the vibrant threads of dyed silk, their colours muted in the morning sun, yet still striking. Every detail seems deliberate, every movement part of a choreography honed over generations. You lean back against a palm trunk, letting the sun warm your face, and feel a slow contentment settle over you. The oasis is not just a resting place, it's a threshold. Beyond these palms, the desert stretches vast and unyielding, promising hardship, wonder, and stories you'll carry with you long after the journey ends. The morning birds trill overhead, camels shuffle in rhythm, and somewhere far off, a merchant calls out a greeting in a language you almost understand. You breathe it all in, knowing this quiet moment is rare. A fleeting calm before the dust and adventure of the caravan trail takes over. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The caravan stirs with deliberate purpose as you wander among the traders and animals, noticing the intricate choreography that precedes a desert journey. You watch as camels kneel obediently, while their packs, woven baskets, heavy bolts of silk, and sacks of dates are fastened with rope and leather straps, each bundle carefully weighed and balanced. You feel the soft tug of the reins in your hands as a young handler guides a particularly stubborn camel, muttering under his breath about its morning mood, and you can't help but smile. Historians still argue whether these caravan formations were standardized across Bactria or largely improvised based on local knowledge and the whims of the camels themselves. Nearby, a woman lays out small charms on a mat, dried herbs, carved amulets, and what looks suspiciously like tiny pieces of turquoise. She murmurs protective incantations over each one, and you realize that beyond the practicalities of water and load distribution, there is a careful layer of superstition designed to guard the caravan from unseen desert threats. Quirky historians have even suggested that some of these charms doubled as early forms of communication, tiny coded symbols only the caravan insiders understood. You tuck the idea away, amused at how human ingenuity often dresses itself in mystery. The camel drivers begin their ritual inspection, bending close to check hooves, testing the tension of harnesses, and sniffing each animal's breath as though it could reveal the coming day's fortunes. You step closer, noticing a faint, earthy aroma of camel sweat mingling with dried herbs, a scent that is oddly comforting once your mind allows it. Some traders laugh at a camel that refuses to kneel, teasing it with bits of dried dates, and you realize that even centuries ago, humor was an essential tool for survival in long, grueling journeys. Loading continues with precision. Spices, saffron, coriander, and cumin are carefully bundled in cloth to prevent spoilage, while silk rolls are wrapped in protective layers to shield them from sand abrasion. The light plays on polished ceramic water jugs, glinting like tiny mirrors in the morning sun. You notice a small, almost forgotten detail. Some merchants wrap thin strips of metal around valuable items, a technique historians are still debating. Was it theft deterrence or an early form of heat regulation? You can't decide whether to be impressed or just amused. As the sun rises higher, the heat begins to creep into the sand, warming it enough that you can feel it through your shoes. The caravan handlers start organizing the animals into their departure formation. Strong camels at the front, younger or older animals in the middle, and the slowest at the back. You spot a tiny, almost comical ritual. A few merchants pat their camels 3 times on the flank and whisper encouraging words. Some claim this ensures loyalty, others say it's purely symbolic. Either way, it's oddly endearing and a reminder that human touch persists even in pragmatic desert commerce. You wander past a group checking provisions, noticing a curious practice. Some packages include small, hidden pouches of salted water for emergencies, a method historians still debate in terms of its widespread use or regional uniqueness. You imagine the panic of a camel running dry in the middle of the Gobi or Karakum and silently admire the foresight. Meanwhile, you hear laughter as a boy accidentally drops a pouch, sending a flurry of cumin across the sand, the smell mingling with the sun-baked earth. Finally, everything seems ready. Camels shift nervously, jingling their harness bells, while merchants check and double-check their loads. You notice how the air is heavy with anticipation, sunlight, dust, and the faint metallic tang of camel sweat combine to create a signature scent of readiness. Every movement is purposeful, every glance and gesture part of a silent language that has guided these caravans for generations. You step back, feeling both included and slightly out of your depth. The preparation is more than packing. It's a ritual of trust, patience, and subtle communication. You realize that every item, every rope knot, every charm or whispered incantation is part of a layered strategy for survival and success. The caravan is a living organism, and its heartbeat is the rhythm of preparation, a rhythm you can now feel in your chest, a quiet drum signaling that the journey is imminent. The caravan finally begins to move, the first steps crunching over sun-baked sand as the oasis falls behind you. You feel the subtle sway of the camels beneath you, a gentle but persistent rocking that almost lulls your thoughts into a hypnotic rhythm. Dust rises in lazy spirals from their hooves, and you squint at the horizon, where faint mountains and distant dunes blur into heat waves. Merchants call greetings to one another, laughter carrying across the sand, and the air is alive with the hum of a world in motion. Historians still argue whether these early Silk Road routes were primarily designed for trade efficiency or evolved organically from centuries of migration paths. You notice the first of the silk bundles shifting slightly with each step, and you instinctively adjust the ropes, feeling the subtle give and tension. The air smells faintly of camel sweat and roasted grains, mingling with hints of exotic spices, cardamom, saffron and pepper, stored in tightly wrapped sacks. Somewhere, a young apprentice hums a tune to keep pace, and it seems that music, even faint and spontaneous, has always travelled with traders. Some fringe historians suggest that these melodies doubled as early signalling methods, passing warnings or encouragement along the caravan line. You chuckle softly at the idea of a camel musical semaphore. The route stretches straight and relentless ahead, the sand forming tiny ridges and patterns shaped by wind over countless centuries. You pass by abandoned stone markers and low piles of rock, ancient waypoints whose original purpose is debated even now. One scholar argues they were used as astronomical guides, another insists they marked resting spots for camels. Either way, their presence creates a subtle, almost ghostly rhythm to the journey, as if the past is quietly marching alongside you. A distant nomad appears on a ridge, waving a hand, and you instinctively wave back. Camels snort, lifting dust in gentle plumes, and you can't help but smile at the absurdity. Here you are, centuries later in spirit, following a path once travelled by merchants who might have never imagined a stranger watching their every step. You overhear a trader telling a story about a silk shipment that vanished in the dunes. Some claim bandits, others blame shifting sands, and you notice the shared tension and relief as he finishes the tale. You glance at the camel's feet, marvelling at their adaptations to the desert, tough soles, broad pads, and a gait that seems effortless. Some fringe historians propose that traders would paint their camels' legs with certain herbs to prevent infections, a practice that's still debated in terms of its actual effectiveness. You lean closer to feel the heat radiating from their bodies, and imagine the countless journeys these animals have endured, carrying silks, spices, and sometimes secrets. The caravan rhythm settles into a hypnotic pace, front animals plodding steadily, middle camels following like clockwork, and the rear ensuring no one strays. You notice small but meaningful rituals. A driver pats a camel on the head, a merchant murmurs to the ropes, and tiny bells jingle in patterns almost like Morse code. There's humour too. A young camel suddenly tosses its head, flicking a dust cloud across the group, and laughter ripples through the line. Even centuries ago, traders knew that levity was essential in long stretches of isolation. By mid-morning, the sun climbs higher, and the heat begins to press against your skin. You sip from a water pouch, grateful for the careful rationing, and feel a strange connection to the countless others who have traversed this route. Every step tells a story of survival, trade, ingenuity, and human curiosity. The desert stretches endlessly, but with every camel step, you move deeper into history, part of a living continuum that has shaped empires and economies with nothing more than perseverance and hope. You pause for a moment, letting your gaze sweep the horizon, watching the caravan undulate like a living thread weaving through a vast, sandy tapestry. The scent of spices, the sway of the camels, the faint echo of a distant tune, all coalesce into a gentle, hypnotic rhythm. And as you breathe it in, you realize that this journey is more than travel. It's a moving meditation, a slow, deliberate dance with the desert. And you're part of its quiet story now. The desert's heat presses down as the caravan finds its rhythm, and you begin to sense the real challenges that lie ahead. Sand shifts beneath camel hooves like a living, restless carpet, and the sun glares from a cloudless sky, turning every surface into a mirror of warmth. You feel sweat bead along your forehead, mingle with the fine grit of dust, and drip down your back. The camels, ever patient, carry on with their steady plod, but even they shift nervously in the relentless sun. Historians still argue whether caravans preferred to travel early morning and late evening exclusively, or if midday marches were a common practice to avoid overnight bandits. Either way, you quickly learn that timing is as vital as provisions. A sudden gust whips sand into your eyes, forcing you to duck behind a camel's flank and laugh at your own clumsy reflexes. You see merchants quickly adjust protective cloths over the cargo and cover their faces with scarves, the classic desert sand masks that make you feel like a modern-day ninja. Some fringe historians suggest that early travelers might have even coated their skin with a mixture of mud and crocodile dung for sun protection, a detail that is equal parts horrifying and fascinating. You secretly hope this practice didn't stick around for too long. The path ahead undulates with small dunes, and each rise seems innocuous until a sudden slope tests the camel's footing. You clutch the ropes instinctively, feeling the animal's muscles tense and relax beneath you. The sand crunches in a soft, granular rhythm, like walking on broken sugar. Every step demands attention, yet there's a meditative quality to the repetition. You notice the scents of the caravan, baked camel hide, warm spices, and the faint metallic tang of sweat, all coalescing into the unmistakable aroma of desert endurance. As the hours pass, you encounter small, unexpected challenges. A camel balks at a particularly deep dune, forcing a quick reorganization of the line. A merchant mutters about hidden sinkholes, areas where sand shifts unpredictably, swallowing feet or sometimes small loads without warning. Scholars are still uncertain about the frequency of such sand traps, as records vary between exaggeration and routine cautionary notes. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of an entire spice shipment disappearing into the sand, leaving behind only a faint, aromatic memory. The horizon shimmers with heat mirages, some stretching into towers, others forming pools of impossible water. You pause, squinting, and realize that the desert constantly plays tricks on your senses. Merchants occasionally joke about these mirages. There's your oasis, right next to the sand bandits, and you find yourself smiling at their dry humor. Historians debate whether these optical illusions actually influenced caravan routes, or if traders simply laughed off their eyes' betrayals. You suspect a little of both. Lunch, if it can be called that, is a quick ritual of nibbling dried fruits and sipping water, done while swaying atop the camels. You notice a peculiar practice. Some traders sprinkle powdered herbs on their tongue before long rides, claiming it eases thirst and fatigue. Scholars remain skeptical of this technique's efficacy, but the belief itself shows how resourcefulness mingled with superstition on long treks. You try a pinch, grimace at the taste, and appreciate the persistence of human creativity. However questionable, by late afternoon, the heat softens just slightly, and shadows stretch across the dunes. You watch camels dip their heads to graze on the sparse desert brush, their patience and adaptability a constant marvel. Small gusts lift sand into the air, creating miniature dust devils that twist and dance across the landscape. You inhale the dusty, warm air, feeling the sun's fatigue settling into your muscles, and begin to appreciate the endurance it takes to traverse these ancient paths. Through it all, you realize that the desert's challenges are not just physical, they are mental. Every dune climbed, every gust of wind endured, and every mirage questioned is a test of focus, resilience, and the delicate understanding between human and beast. The caravan presses on, moving steadily as if guided by an invisible rhythm that has carried traders for centuries. You begin to see that survival here is less about speed and more about patience, attentiveness, and the subtle, almost imperceptible knowledge passed down through generations. You glance at the camel's ears flicking in unison and hear the low murmur of merchants' instructions mingling with the occasional chuckle or reprimand. The desert is relentless, yet it teaches you to move slowly, to observe keenly, and to find small joys even in the harshest conditions. The sand stretches endlessly, the horizon seems impossibly far, and yet each step feels significant, another layer in the story of countless Bactrian caravans that have navigated these same dunes, carrying silk, spices, and secrets across the vast, sunlit expanse. The horizon shimmers and bends as heat ripples off the sand, creating illusions that tease your eyes. You squint, trying to discern whether the distant sparkle is water or just another trick of the sun. And the camels sway patiently beneath you, unfazed by the visual deception. Mirages appear like temporary cities, complete with imaginary tents and bustling merchants, tempting you with promises of shade and cool water that vanish the moment you approach. Historians still debate the locations of certain Bactrian waterholes, as some accounts may describe actual springs, while others might be exaggerated or entirely imagined. You shift your weight on the camel's back and notice a peculiar shimmer on the sand's surface, like a thin sheet of heat dancing just above the ground. A young merchant points ahead, joking that the desert itself is playing tricks to test your perception. You laugh, but there's an edge of truth. Misjudging a mirage could mean a wasted mile or a dangerously dehydrated search for non-existent water. Fringe historians suggest that some caravaneers might have learned to read mirages, interpreting them as subtle signs of real terrain features, though proof remains elusive. As you ride, you begin to see clusters of palm trees, or what seem to be clusters, flicker in and out of existence on distant dunes. You recall stories of traders mistaking these illusions for thriving oases, sometimes traveling hours in vain pursuit. It's a reminder that the desert's beauty is also a test, a blend of wonder and risk. You sip your water cautiously, feeling the cool liquid against your parched throat, and marvel at how much these small gestures of preparation, like rationing and packing herbs, could determine survival. The camels march steadily, their padded feet pressing into the sand without leaving deep impressions, a subtle efficiency you hadn't noticed before. A trader nudges his mount and mutters about seeing the real water before the fake, hinting at knowledge passed down through generations. You imagine the countless hours Bactrian merchants spent learning to distinguish a shimmering pool of actual spring water from a cruelly painted mirage of the mind. Some historians argue that misread mirages might have inspired early desert legends, giving rise to stories of phantom cities swallowed by sand. As the day wears on, you notice the desert beginning to play with more than just light. The wind lifts small grains of sand into swirling spirals, creating miniature whirlwinds that dance across the dunes. You duck instinctively, laughing as a tiny gust brushes your cheek. The merchants move with practiced ease, wrapping scarves over faces and adjusting the ropes of their loads. Some fringe accounts suggest that traders would sprinkle water or herbs to anchor themselves visually against mirages, though scholars are still uncertain how widespread or effective these methods truly were. You lean forward, shading your eyes with your hand, and spot the faint outline of an oasis ahead. Or is it? The optical illusion twists and shimmers as you ride closer, making it impossible to tell from a distance. You feel a familiar mixture of anticipation and skepticism, a lesson that the desert instills early: trust your instincts, but verify with caution. The mirage dances just out of reach, teasing and guiding you in equal measure. A distant camel bell chimes softly, and you realize that while the mirages are illusions, the rhythm of the caravan is real, constant, grounding, and reassuring. The sun continues to bend the horizon, casting elongated shadows that ripple across the dunes. The air carries faint whispers of spices from the caravan, mingling with the sun-baked scent of sand and camel hide. You notice small details: a tiny lizard skitters across the hot sand, the patterns of dried footprints left by previous travelers, and a scattering of hardy desert plants clinging to life. The further you go, the more you start to trust the subtle signs: the way light glances off the sand, the texture of distant dunes, and the behavior of camels themselves. Every mirage, whether teasing or accidental, teaches patience and observation. You catch yourself smiling at the absurdity and beauty of it all. The desert is both trickster and teacher, its illusions as much a part of the journey as the tangible oasis waiting somewhere ahead. By late afternoon, the sun softens slightly, and the shimmering horizon seems to settle into a more defined landscape. Some pools of water appear real, while others vanish like ghosts. You pause, letting your gaze sweep across the scene, realizing that every mirage encountered is a lesson in caution, imagination, and respect for this vast, sun-drenched wilderness. The caravan continues forward, each step through the shifting sand an echo of countless traders who have navigated the same deceptive beauty, carrying silk, spices, and secrets across the vast Bactrian expanse. The horizon finally softens into shapes that seem less like illusions and more like life. Figures moving along distant dunes, camels silhouetted against the sun, and finally, the faint outline of nomads approaching. You notice the intricate patterns of their tents, woven with a care that has been honed over generations. As you draw closer, you realize these desert dwellers are both part of and apart from the caravan world. They travel freely, guided by intuition and knowledge of water, yet share the same rhythms of survival. Historians still argue whether Bactrian nomads primarily acted as guides, traders, or occasional threats to caravans, but their presence is unmistakable. You hear the soft clatter of hooves as they meet your caravan at a crossroad, the desert sand raising a subtle haze around the meeting. You feel a mixture of curiosity and caution as the nomads approach, offering smiles, gestures, and the faint aroma of dried meat and smoked herbs. Some fringe accounts suggest that these encounters sometimes included barter with odd items, like camel hair ropes or small amulets, that historians are still debating the exact value or symbolism of. You chuckle at the thought of a rare trinket exchanging hands for a handful of dates. A tall nomad greets your group with a flourish, his voice carrying easily across the dunes. You step forward, noticing the careful balance of respect and humor in his gestures. The caravan merchants respond in kind, exchanging small gifts of spices and coins, their movements precise, yet fluid. You feel the subtle excitement of two different worlds intersecting in this harsh landscape, a blend of practicality and ritual that has been refined over centuries. The nomads offer guidance for the next stretch, pointing out dunes that shift unpredictably and hidden waterholes marked only by clusters of resilient vegetation. You marvel at their intimate understanding of the desert, realizing that their knowledge isn't found in maps or scrolls, but in observation, memory, and an almost instinctive reading of the landscape. Some scholars speculate that these guides developed a coded system of signals, patterns in campfires, smoke, or animal tracks that communicated directions and warnings, though evidence remains elusive. You walk among their tents, taking in the subtle details: woven carpets drying in the sun, small bundles of herbs tied with leather strips, and children playing with makeshift toys crafted from camel bones and discarded cloth. There's a quiet humor in the way the children mimic adult movements, leading imaginary caravans across the sand. You notice an elder performing a curious ritual, spinning a string of beads and whispering words you can't understand. Fringe historians debate whether this is purely spiritual or an ancient mnemonic technique to remember water routes. The nomads invite your caravan to share a simple meal: flatbreads baked in portable clay ovens, salted dried meat, and water drawn from deep wells. You sit cross-legged in the sand, savouring the contrast between the soft bread and the faintly gritty desert dust clinging to it. Laughter and storytelling fill the air, a gentle rhythm that seems to connect everyone in this fleeting meeting. You notice the subtle hierarchy at play: the elder speaks first, young men adjust camel loads, and everyone else participates in harmony. A small caravan dog wanders through the gathering, tail wagging and ears alert, sniffing at both travellers and nomads. Its presence is comforting, reminding you that companionship is vital even in the harshest environments. You feel a gentle tug of familiarity as merchants joke about the dog's ability to sense sandstorms before humans can, a playful exaggeration, but one that speaks to centuries of observational knowledge passed down in stories. As the afternoon sun begins to tilt, shadows grow long, and the desert landscape softens into warm tones of gold and amber. You realize that these nomads, wandering free yet connected through trade and shared survival, embody the delicate balance of independence and community that defines life in Bactria. Their presence enriches the journey, providing both practical guidance and a touch of humanity in an otherwise vast and indifferent landscape. You watch the nomads mount their camels and slowly ride away, leaving your caravan with advice, laughter, and the lingering scent of smoked herbs. Their movement seems almost choreographed with the wind, a fluid rhythm that disappears into the horizon. You feel a quiet sense of gratitude and curiosity, knowing that the desert holds countless such encounters, each unique, fleeting, and quietly transformative. The caravan resumes its pace, the memory of the nomads lingering like a soft melody in the back of your mind. As the caravan continues along the sun-drenched route, the air begins to hum with stories, secrets, and the faint aroma of drying spices. Merchants gather in small clusters, exchanging news of recent markets, the prices of silk in far-off cities, and the occasional tale of misadventure. You lean closer, curious, noticing that these stories are not just idle chatter, they are a vital form of knowledge transfer. Historians still debate how much of what passed along these trade routes was factual versus embellished storytelling, but either way, the tales shape decisions and alliances. You catch a snippet of conversation about a rare shipment of saffron that vanished under mysterious circumstances. One trader insists bandits must have ambushed the caravan, another swears the desert itself swallowed it. Fringe accounts even suggest that some goods simply walked away due to clever smuggling by insiders, a rumor that sparks quiet laughter and knowing glances among the group. You grin, realizing that trade has always been a mixture of serious business and playful subterfuge. The caravan's rhythm allows for these stories to weave seamlessly into travel, the steady sway of camels beneath you providing a hypnotic backdrop. You notice subtle ways the merchants communicate, a nod here, a shift of the reins there, small signals that indicate both trust and caution. Some scholars suggest that early traders developed a semi-coded language, using gestures, bells, and even the arrangement of cargo to send messages along the line, though evidence is patchy. You imagine a silk bolt wrapped in a certain way signaling bandits ahead, and chuckle at the ingenuity. As the day stretches, you hear stories of desert survival, some mundane, others bordering on the fantastical. One merchant recounts crossing a salt flat where the ground seemed to sparkle like a mirror, only to reveal treacherous hidden patches that could swallow a camel whole. Another swears that a caravan once followed a phantom camel, believing it would lead them to water, only to discover it was a trick of the wind and sand. The mix of practical knowledge and cautionary tale is both entertaining and educational, a blend that historians note as crucial to caravan culture. You wander closer to the center of activity, where traders swap goods, tally accounts, and occasionally squabble over debts or claims. There's a sense of community here, punctuated by small, humorous rituals. A merchant taps his satchel with a stick to ward off bad luck. Another taps a camel's nose before crossing a dune. Some fringe scholars suggest these actions may have origins in long-lost religious or magical traditions, though the exact meaning is uncertain. You grin, imagining centuries of cautious, superstitious hands tapping camels before crossing the shifting sands. Between trades, merchants whisper about exotic goods, powdered gemstones from distant mountains, dyes so vibrant they seem unreal, and tiny mechanical devices that produce music. You're fascinated by the sheer variety, imagining the ways these items might have traveled for hundreds of miles, changing hands countless times. It strikes you that storytelling itself is a form of currency here. Information about markets, safe routes, and trustworthy partners can be just as valuable as spices or silk. At one stop, a young apprentice shows you a clever trick, tying a small piece of coloured cloth to a camel's pack to indicate which merchant owns it, preventing disputes in case the caravan splits or animals stray. Historians are still uncertain how widespread such systems were, but the practicality is undeniable. You tuck the idea away, impressed at the ingenuity that turns everyday problems into clever solutions. The sun begins its slow descent, casting long shadows over the sand. You notice a small cluster of merchants seated in the shade, exchanging whispered rumours about hidden trade routes and the occasional lost oasis. Laughter rises now and then, mingling with the soft jingling of camel bells. You feel the pulse of the caravan's life, not just movement, but communication, improvisation, and subtle strategy, all coalescing into a rhythm that feels as ancient as the dunes themselves. Even as the day winds on, the stories continue, flowing from merchant to merchant like a gentle desert river. Some recount encounters with wild animals, others with rival traders, and a few with odd superstitions passed down through generations. You notice how humour punctuates the more serious lessons. A cautionary tale of a camel that ate a trader's boots earns the same attention as instructions for rationing water. The caravan thrives on this blend of knowledge and amusement, and you feel yourself becoming part of the living tradition, absorbing both practical wisdom and subtle human quirks. By evening, the caravan has travelled miles of open sand, each story lingering like a gentle echo in the warm air. You watch the camels sway in rhythm, merchants gesturing with small signals, and realise that trade along the Bactrian routes was never just commerce. It was a network of information, ingenuity, and shared human experience. The secrets exchanged today, whether mundane or strange, become part of the tapestry of desert life, carried forward with each step, each sway of a camel, and each whispered tale. The landscape begins to change subtly as the caravan moves onward. Low stone walls rise from the sand, half buried and weathered by centuries of wind, hinting at settlements long abandoned. You notice the faint remnants of mud brick foundations and the occasional collapsed arch, their purpose and origin almost entirely lost to time. Historians still debate whether these ruins were thriving trade hubs, defensive outposts, or temporary caravan stops, but the eerie, skeletal structures hold your attention regardless. You dismount briefly to inspect a fragment of carved stone, tracing faint, weathered symbols with your fingers. Some suggest they were records of transactions, others claim religious or astronomical markers. Fringe scholars even argue that some of these ruins align with the stars, possibly serving as navigational aids for traders traveling at night, though proof remains elusive. You chuckle softly at the thought of merchants double-checking a stone marker against the constellations, wondering if they ever had a compass or just sheer intuition. Camels trudge past, their padded feet stirring fine dust that drifts across the ruins like ghostly mist. You notice a small cluster of baked clay jars half buried in sand, some still sealed, and imagine the hands that once filled them with grain, water, or precious commodities. It strikes you how the desert both preserves and erases, leaving traces that are tantalizingly incomplete, like fragments of a puzzle you can never fully solve. Merchants discuss the ruins in hushed tones, swapping theories as they adjust their loads. Some whisper that these sites were abandoned due to shifting trade routes, others claim drought or raids as the culprit. You listen intrigued, as one old merchant recounts a story of a settlement that supposedly vanished overnight, its inhabitants carried away by desert spirits, or, more likely, some natural calamity that left only empty walls and scattered debris. Humor flickers through the conversation as they debate whether the ghosts would be offended by a dropped coin or a camel's careless step. You wander closer to a partially standing arch, noting the delicate craftsmanship, geometric patterns etched into baked brick, faint traces of color still clinging in recesses. Scholars are still uncertain about the dating of some Bactrian ruins, with radiocarbon evidence and stylistic analysis providing conflicting results. You pause, imagining the life that once bustled here, traders haggling over spices, children running between tents, and the occasional camel braying as it struggled under a heavy load. A gust of wind lifts sand across the site, and you instinctively shield your eyes. The desert seems to breathe around you, both alive and indifferent, its history hidden in layers of dust and stone. You notice tiny lizards darting across sun-warmed bricks, a small reminder that life persists even amid decay. Fringe accounts suggest that some ruins were used as ceremonial sites, possibly linked to local deities or caravan rituals, though the evidence is fragmentary and interpretations vary widely. The caravan pauses briefly to rest near a larger ruin, camels kneeling while merchants adjust ropes and water supplies. Sparks of conversation drift through the air, debates about which ruins might have stored water, speculation about hidden tunnels, and playful bets over who could find the most intact artifact. You watch them move, realizing that their reverence for the ruins is tempered with humor, a way to honor the past without being weighed down by it. As the afternoon light softens, shadows stretch across crumbling walls, creating long lines that seem to guide the caravan forward. You feel a strange intimacy with the place. The ruins are silent, yet they whisper of human ingenuity, ambition, and impermanence. You step carefully over scattered stones, aware that every footprint is both a mark on history and a fleeting trace destined to vanish. By the time the caravan resumes its steady pace, the ruins have faded behind you, leaving only the wind's whisper and the shifting sands as witnesses. You glance back once more, noticing the faint glint of a sunlit brick that seems to wink at you, a reminder that history is never fully lost. It lingers in echoes, shadows, and the careful steps of those who follow. The journey continues, each mile carrying both the weight of the past and the quiet anticipation of what lies ahead. The sky darkens subtly as clouds gather along the horizon, hinting at a desert storm brewing in the distance. You feel a sudden chill, a sharp contrast to the steady heat of the sand beneath your feet, and the caravan instinctively shifts into alert mode. Camels snort nervously, swishing their tails, while merchants tighten ropes and adjust loads. Historians still debate how often these sudden sandstorms affected caravan routes, with some chroniclers exaggerating their frequency and others underestimating the dangers entirely. A gust sweeps across the dunes, lifting fine grains of sand into the air and creating tiny whirlwinds that swirl around your ankles. You duck instinctively behind a camel's flank, laughing at the absurdity of being momentarily blinded by something so natural. Fringe accounts suggest that some traders carried small talismans or charms specifically to ward off storms, although scholars remain uncertain if these were symbolic, practical, or a blend of both. You glance at a bell on a camel's harness, wondering if jingling it might actually calm the animal or just add to the chaos. The first heavy gusts arrive, turning the sky an ominous ochre. You feel sand stinging your exposed skin, slipping into eyes, mouth, and hair despite your scarf and protective cloth. Merchants call out instructions, their voices carrying over the howling wind, and you notice the choreography of preparation. Camels are aligned in tight columns, lighter loads move to the center, and everyone crouches low to maintain balance. You realize that desert storms are not just a test of endurance, they are an exercise in precision, trust, and teamwork. Small depressions in the dunes threaten to trap the caravan, forcing minor detours. You notice an experienced guide pointing towards slightly firmer sand, guiding camels away from the deceptively soft patches. Scholars are still uncertain how ancient traders learned to read these subtle changes in terrain, though some believe it involved decades of trial, error, and instinct passed down through generations. You lean close to a camel, feeling the tension in its muscles, and marvel at how animal and human knowledge intertwine so seamlessly. Lightning flickers in the distance, illuminating the dunes like a series of ghostly mirrors. You hear a low rumble of thunder that rolls across the desert, making the sand vibrate faintly beneath your feet. Some fringe historians speculate that sudden storms may have contributed to lost caravan records, with documents and rare goods swept away before they could be accounted for. You imagine centuries of silk, spices, and carefully noted transactions vanishing into the desert's whim, leaving only stories and whispers behind. Despite the chaos, there's a strange beauty in the storm. The clouds cast shifting shadows, turning dunes into a tapestry of light and dark, and the wind carries a faint, mineral-rich scent of wet sand and ozone. Merchants joke about the storm, warning each other that the desert is testing your camel karma, and you chuckle at their mix of humor and pragmatism. Even amid danger, laughter persists, a subtle reminder that humans adapt not only with skill, but with attitude. The caravan moves cautiously, following the guidance of experienced hands, adjusting for the ever-changing wind patterns and avoiding deeper sand traps. You notice a quick improvisation. A merchant has tied extra cloth over fragile ceramic jars, creating a temporary protective sheath. Scholars still debate whether such strategies were routine or ad hoc, but the ingenuity is unmistakable. You reflect on how necessity shapes creativity, even in the harshest environments. Gradually, the storm's intensity begins to wane. The wind still bites, but the dust settles in shifting sheets across the sand, and the sky lightens with hints of sun. Camels shake off the worst of the grit, merchants check their loads, and the caravan resumes its steady rhythm. You inhale deeply, tasting the faint electric tang of the storm in the air, and marvel at how these sudden, uncontrollable elements shape both the physical journey and the mental resilience of all who traverse the desert. As the evening approaches, the dunes are streaked with shadow and gold, and the desert seems to exhale a sigh of relief. You glance back at the storm's fading edge, feeling a quiet admiration for the caravan's ability to endure, adapt, and continue moving forward. The sand is smoothed into new patterns by the wind, erasing traces of the chaos, and you are reminded again that the desert is both a harsh teacher and a subtle storyteller, etching lessons into memory as much as into the shifting terrain. Night descends gradually, painting the dunes in deep amber and soft indigo. The caravan slows, camels kneeling as merchants prepare their evening campfires. Sparks leap into the cool desert air, casting fleeting, dancing shadows on sand and sack alike. You notice the small rituals that accompany this daily pause. Water is rationed, loads are inspected, and tarps are stretched to protect precious goods. Historians still debate how formalized these evening routines were. Some suggest they were codified for efficiency, others insist improvisation ruled each night. But the result is the same, a calm, organized pause in an otherwise relentless landscape. You approach the fires, feeling the warmth reach your face and hands. The scent of roasted grains and faintly smoked meat mingles with the earthy aroma of camels resting nearby. Traders settle into circles, sharing tales from the day's journey and whispering rumors from distant markets. Some fringe accounts suggest that these fires were also used for secret signaling, the smoke patterns conveying messages to distant caravans, though scholars remain uncertain if this was widespread practice or isolated ingenuity. The night sky unfolds in a blanket of stars, each one glimmering above the dunes like a jeweled map. You tilt your head back, mesmerized by the sheer scale, and notice merchants pointing out familiar constellations to keep track of direction. You realize that astronomy wasn't merely decoration for travelers, it was a practical tool. Historians argue about the extent of this knowledge, whether every caravan trader had an innate understanding of celestial navigation or relied only on guides. But either way, the stars are steady, impartial companions on the long journey. Laughter ripples through the camp as someone imitates a camel snort, or recounts a misadventure from the heat of the day. You notice a subtle interplay of hierarchy. Elders recount lessons, younger traders respond with humor, and everyone participates in this evening chorus, their voices blending with the occasional bell or bray. It's an enduring pattern, repeated across centuries, and it feels comforting, almost hypnotic. Fringe historians note that storytelling at these nightly gatherings might have also served as memory aids, helping traders recall complex routes and contacts in an era before written ledgers were widespread. You wander among the camels, noticing small touches of care, ropes retied, loads double-checked, blankets tucked against chill night winds. Some merchants whisper prayers or mutter incantations over charms tied to the saddles, protective rituals that scholars still debate, whether symbolic or practical. They reveal a human need to impose control over an unpredictable environment. The interplay of superstition, humor, and careful planning creates a rhythm unique to caravan life, one that balances the tangible and intangible elements of survival. The firelight flickers across faces, illuminating both exhaustion and quiet contentment. You notice shadows dancing across the dunes, giving life to the sand in ways that seem almost magical. Discussions flow naturally from practical concerns to whimsical tales, a camel's mischievous antics, a narrowly avoided sand trap, or an unusually clever barter. You smile at the mixture of seriousness and levity. It's this balance that allows caravans to endure both the hardships and monotony of the desert. A small child curls near a camel, watching the flames with wide eyes, learning the rhythms of desert life without words. You feel a gentle sense of continuity, how each generation absorbs knowledge, humor, and ritual from those before them. The campfire crackles, sending sparks into the sky, each one fleeting, like a tiny memory of the day. You realize that these fires are more than warmth or light. They are the heartbeat of the caravan, a center around which stories, survival, and human connection converge. As the night deepens, your gaze drifts across the dunes, the firelight shrinking in the distance. The caravan's pulse slows, each movement more deliberate, each sound softened by the vast, sleeping desert. You feel a quiet camaraderie, not just with the merchants and animals around you, but with countless travelers who have paused here before, sharing warmth and stories beneath the the same stars. The soft glow of fire embers mingles with the rising moon, and the desert exhales a lullaby of sand, wind, and distant bells. By the time you settle onto a warm patch of sand, the desert has transformed into a serene, almost sacred space. The camels kneel, fires burn low, and the night stretches endlessly above, full of quiet promise. You take a deep breath, tasting the cool mineral air, and realize that this moment, this gentle pause amid endless sand, is a reward in itself. Even the smallest sparks, the faintest voices, and the softest shifting of sand remind you that life continues, resilient and enduring, in rhythm with the desert's subtle wisdom. The sun rises slowly, washing the dunes in soft apricot and gold, and you wake to the gentle sway of the camels beneath you. The caravan stirs, and you notice the familiar rhythm of morning routines. Water pouches are checked, loads resecured, and a quiet murmur of conversation flows like a river across the sand. Camels shuffle their feet, their padded soles leaving delicate imprints that will vanish with the wind. Historians still argue about the specifics of daily caravan routines, whether strict schedules were maintained or flexibility ruled, but the outcome is the same: survival depends on careful attention and coordination. You watch the camel drivers move with practiced grace, tying knots, adjusting reins, and whispering encouragement. The animals respond almost instinctively, a partnership forged through experience, trust, and repetition. A fringe account mentions traders applying aromatic oils to calm restless camels, a method whose effectiveness is debated among scholars, but the detail adds to your sense of wonder at human creativity in adapting to desert life. You can't help but smile at the tiny rituals that make the difference between smooth progress and chaos. Daily chores blend seamlessly with peculiar superstitions. A merchant carefully arranges tiny charms along a saddle strap, muttering protective words under his breath. You ask about the practice, and he explains that they guard against misfortune on the road, a combination of inherited wisdom and ritual belief. Scholars still debate whether these were symbolic gestures or had practical purposes, such as deterring theft or organizing cargo, but you decide it doesn't matter. The care behind them is real. As the caravan begins its morning march, you observe the meticulous attention given to camel care, cleaning hooves, checking for sores, and ensuring hydration. Each minor act is a layer of insurance against the desert's subtle cruelty. Some fringe historians note that certain caravans carried powdered herbs to sprinkle over wounds or tired joints, though the extent of this practice remains uncertain. You watch an apprentice sprinkle a small amount on a camel's leg, the animal twitching its ears as if approving the gesture. The rhythm of the caravan is punctuated by small moments of humor. One camel stubbornly refuses to kneel, causing its handler to employ a theatrical series of gestures that draws laughter from nearby merchants. You notice that even in such a harsh environment, levity is essential, a lesson that repeats across centuries of caravan life. Scholars agree that humor and storytelling were critical coping mechanisms for traders, helping them endure both the monotony and danger of long journeys. You notice the interplay between work and story. While securing loads or measuring rations, merchants recount odd rituals, like singing to camels to encourage loyalty, or crafting miniature clay figurines to symbolize safe passage. Historians still argue whether these were widely practiced or isolated eccentricities, but the combination of practical skill and whimsical belief adds texture to daily life. You try humming a tune to your camel, half in jest, and imagine yourself as part of a centuries-long tradition of blending function and charm. Meals, when taken, are simple and communal: flatbreads, dried fruits, and the occasional morsel of meat or cheese, eaten while camels plod steadily onward. Conversations drift from observations about the sand to stories of past expeditions. Fringe accounts claim that some merchants practiced mnemonic storytelling, embedding route information and trade secrets in amusing tales to help apprentices remember critical details. You realize that humor, memory, and survival are interwoven, each supporting the other like the ropes securing the caravan's loads. By mid-morning, the sun warms the dunes, the scent of spices mingling with baked camel hide and sun-dried earth. You begin to understand the subtle language of caravan life, a slight tilt of the reins, a nod, a brief whistle. Every gesture communicates intent, instruction, or caution. Scholars still debate the extent to which these non-verbal cues were standardized, but you feel their efficiency firsthand. The caravan moves as a single breathing entity, every participant, human and animal, attuned to the needs and rhythms of the group. As the day progresses, you notice smaller, more personal rituals, a trader whispering to a camel before a long stretch of dunes, a young apprentice carefully adjusting a saddle blanket, and someone softly patting a bundle of spices for luck. Each small gesture feels deliberate and meaningful, blending practical survival with almost theatrical care. Fringe historians suggest some of these habits might have origins in ancient caravan superstitions, though evidence remains inconclusive. By late afternoon, you feel a deep connection to the routines, rituals, and rhythms that govern caravan life. Every action, from feeding and grooming camels to the exchange of jokes and charms, is part of a subtle choreography honed over generations. You lean back slightly on your camel, feeling both a participant in and observer of this enduring dance, marveling at the human capacity to adapt, care, and find humor even in one of the harshest landscapes on Earth. The desert stretches endlessly as the caravan continues its steady march, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows over rippling dunes. You notice how the camels' movements create a hypnotic rhythm, their padded feet pressing into the sand with precision, leaving faint tracks that will soon vanish. Merchants adjust loads with practiced hands, checking knots, shifting sacks, and murmuring soft encouragements to their animals. Historians still debate how uniform these practices were along Bactrian routes, whether every caravan followed similar procedures or each group relied on local habits passed down through families. A faint scent of crushed desert herbs drifts through the air, and you realize it comes from small bundles tied to camel saddles, believed to ward off fatigue and pests. Fringe historians speculate that some of these herbs might have had mild medicinal effects, though the evidence remains inconclusive. You tuck the information away, amused at how human resourcefulness mingles with superstition, producing traditions that are both practical and quirky. The caravan passes a shallow wadi, where water used to gather in ancient times. You notice eroded stone markers indicating its previous course, but now only a dry, gravelly depression remains. Merchants point out subtle cues in the sand, tiny vegetation clusters, hardened soil, and animal tracks that might indicate hidden water sources nearby. Scholars still argue how often these natural clues were relied upon versus memorized knowledge, but the keen observation is unmistakable. You watch a young apprentice cautiously probe the sand with a short stick, testing firmness before the camels pass. His actions echo lessons learned over decades, passed down orally through generations of traders. Some fringe accounts claim that apprentices would carry small charms hidden in their satchels to encourage good luck for the group, though scholars remain uncertain whether this was a common practice or isolated superstition. You smile at the mixture of practicality and ritual, recognizing it as a hallmark of caravan culture. The sun begins to dip toward the horizon, turning the dunes a soft amber and casting long, dramatic shadows. Camels kneel in unison as merchants pause for a brief evening rest. You notice small, intimate routines, water pouches passed from hand to hand, camels groomed to remove sand, and careful inspection of precious cargo. Historians still argue whether these evening inspections were formalized or improvised, but the results speak for themselves. Survival and efficiency. Conversations drift toward the day's events, stories of camels that refused to kneel, mirages that tricked the eyes, and minor skirmishes with sandstorms. Laughter punctuates the storytelling, reminding you that humor is essential in sustaining morale on long journeys. Fringe historians have suggested that these humorous stories might have served a practical function as mnemonic devices, embedding route information and safety lessons in entertaining narratives. You lean back, absorbing both the levity and wisdom woven into these moments. As dusk settles, the desert's chill creeps into your skin, prompting merchants to drape light blankets over shoulders and camels. A small fire is lit, sparks spiraling upward into the darkening sky. You notice the comforting smell of smouldering wood mixed with faint traces of the day's spices and camel sweat. Some fringe accounts suggest that these evening fires were also used for signaling distant caravans or as early warning systems, though scholars debate the effectiveness and consistency of such practices. You walk slowly among the camels, feeling the gentle warmth radiating from their bodies as they settle for the night. Some kneel in clusters, while others stretch and yawn, adjusting to the sand and cooling air. Merchants murmur softly, checking for missing items and sharing quiet jokes. You feel a sense of continuity, how these simple, repeated routines echo across centuries, connecting present travelers to generations of traders who endured the same harsh, beautiful landscape. As night deepens, stars appear overhead, scattered like tiny mirrors across the velvet sky. Merchants point out constellations to maintain direction, and you marvel at their calm confidence in navigating vast, empty stretches of desert. Scholars still debate whether every trader possessed innate celestial knowledge or relied entirely on guides, but you feel the certainty in their gestures and the subtle rhythm of the caravan. The camels shift slightly, murmuring low, and you notice the faint jingle of bells as they adjust to the sand. Fires burn low, casting a warm glow across faces lined with both fatigue and satisfaction. You realize that the journey, long and arduous as it is, also offers moments of connection, insight, and quiet joy. The desert, once harsh and indifferent, now feels alive with rhythm, guidance, and the steady pulse of life, moving in harmony with sand, wind, and sky. The final stretch of the journey unfolds under a sky streaked with violet and gold, the dunes rippling like waves frozen in sand. You feel the camel's steady gait beneath you, each step carrying you closer to the distant cluster of palms marking the next oasis. Merchants move with familiar precision, adjusting loads and reins, their gestures subtle, yet full of practiced authority. Historians still debate how consistently caravans approached these final legs, whether fatigue and caution dominated or whether anticipation sparked faster, riskier travel, but the harmony of motion speaks for itself. You inhale the warm, dry air, mingled with faint traces of spices, camel sweat, and the soft scent of desert herbs. A young apprentice points out a distant mirage, and you smile knowingly, remembering how the desert loves to play tricks even on the most experienced travelers. Fringe accounts suggest that some Bactrian caravans carried small reflective objects to distinguish real water from illusions, though the effectiveness of such methods remains uncertain. You lean forward slightly, shielding your eyes, and see the shimmer of what might finally be real water, a promise of relief after days of relentless sand and sun. As the caravan descends a low dune, you notice subtle signs of life, hardy shrubs, scattered rocks, and faint animal tracks. The terrain shifts from the harsh monotony of open sand to the softer, more fertile soil near the oasis. Camels adjust their steps carefully, and you sense a collective easing of tension. Merchants exchange brief smiles, and even the animals seem aware that this segment carries a lighter weight. Scholars still argue whether the oasis served primarily as a resting point or as a small trading hub, but its presence undeniably shaped caravan routes and survival strategies. Approaching the oasis, the first palm fronds come into view, waving gently in a breeze that carries the promise of water and shade. You dismount, feeling the sand cool beneath your feet, and watch the camels kneel in relief. Merchants begin the familiar routines, unpacking essentials, checking supplies, and offering water to the animals. Fringe historians note that some caravans may have used miniature markers or carvings near oasis pools to signal safe drinking areas, though evidence remains incomplete. You observe the care and attention, realizing that centuries of experience have honed these small but crucial practices. Children of nomadic families emerge from nearby tents, running barefoot across the sand, laughter ringing in the air. You notice merchants sharing small gifts or treats, and the scene feels timeless, as if this oasis has been a meeting point for generations of travelers. Historians still debate how frequently these oasis communities interacted with passing caravans, but the interactions you witness speak of mutual reliance, respect, and fleeting camaraderie. The sense of history is palpable, layered beneath each footprint, each palm frond swaying in the warm wind. The water is cool and clear, a sharp contrast to the dry, gritty routine of the desert. You kneel to drink, feeling the refreshment seep through your body, and watch as camels lap eagerly, their tails flicking sand away. A merchant jokes about a camel with an exaggerated splash, and laughter spreads among the group. Humor, observation, and care continue to guide every moment of survival. Fringe scholars speculate that these moments of relaxation were essential to mental health on long treks, a blend of necessity and ritualized leisure. As twilight settles, shadows stretch across the oasis, reflecting in the small pool of water like soft brushstrokes on a canvas. You see merchants preparing evening meals, children playing, and camels resting in clusters, tails swishing lazily. The soft hum of conversation, the gentle lapping of water, and the distant call of desert birds create a lullaby that wraps the oasis in serenity. Historians still argue about the specifics of daily life in these stopping points, but the patterns of care, community, and ritual are unmistakable. You sit back against a warm rock, watching the final glimmers of sunlight fade behind the dunes. The camels shift contentedly, fires flicker, and the desert exhales a long, measured sigh. You notice tiny details, the soft rustle of palm fronds, the shimmer of water in the fading light, the faint aroma of spiced food drifting through the camp. Fringe accounts suggest that some travelers would mark these experiences in small journals or carvings, personal records of survival, wonder, and passage, though few of these records survive intact. The caravan rests fully for the night, a rhythm that has carried you across heat, mirages, ruins, storms, and countless dunes. You feel a profound sense of connection, not only to those around you, but to generations of Bactrian traders who travelled these same routes. Their humour, rituals, ingenuity, and endurance ripple through time, leaving echoes in the sway of camels, the glint of firelight, and the gentle whisper of the desert wind. The journey has been long, challenging, and full of subtle delights, and now, at the oasis, it reaches a quiet, reflective pause. The fire burns low, tiny embers glowing like captured stars as you sink into the soft sand, the camels resting peacefully nearby. The desert exhales a gentle hush, and the warm, mineral-rich air carries the faint scent of spices and sun-baked earth. Shadows flicker softly across the dunes, curling and stretching like whispered memories of the day's journey. You feel the weight of the sun's warmth giving way to night's cool embrace, each breath slow and deliberate, matching the rhythm of the caravan's steady pulse. Above, the sky deepens into indigo, dotted with countless stars that shimmer faintly, guiding the imagination more than the eyes. The gentle murmur of merchants, the soft stirrings of camels, and the faint lapping of water at the oasis merge into a soothing, timeless symphony. You notice the way the wind plays with the palm fronds, brushing against your skin with a tender caress, as if the desert itself is settling in for sleep alongside you. Fires flicker once more, sending tiny sparks upward, each one dissolving into the vast sky like a fleeting memory of the day's struggles, triumphs, and quiet wonders. The ruins, the mirages, the sandstorms, and the subtle rituals of caravan life now fade gently into the background, leaving only the soft glow of embers, the rhythmic sway of camels, and the warm hush of the desert night. Your eyelids grow heavy. The stories, the lessons, and the laughter of the journey settle into your mind like a soft blanket. You feel the sand beneath you, warm and reassuring, carrying the echoes of countless travelers who once walked these dunes. Let your breathing slow, your thoughts soften, and allow the desert's quiet wisdom to drift you gently toward dreams. Good night. Sweet dreams.